is where you willfully mislead somebody, knowing that what you're saying is factually incorrect.
I think I lie very well for my profession.
What does a liar look like? What does a psychopath look like?
I just want to say I hope there's a lot of criminals listening to this. You'll be picking up some good tips.
Brad, how you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Steve. Yourself?
I'm not too bad. I was just going through a couple of things earlier on, and as you know, we like to engage our audience, and right from the bat, I think we should address this issue because it has come up. And
so can I just say before we go
no, you
further,
can't say anything.
No, I just wanted to say, Your Honour, it's already not good for me because you're opening the batting. Go on.
Okay, so we get a message from a Fiona, surname not supplied for whatever reason. Omitted. And her query was she didn't know you were married.
Yeah.
Now, there's got to be a story here. We need some clarification. What is going on? Because on our last podcast, there was a bit of a misdirection, let's call it that. So what's the story from the horse's mouth?
Well, I first of all, let me say that I didn't believe this until my nose was firmly ground into it that I'd done this. But I actually said, I was telling the story about the
Adelaide?
And about the woman who used her dog as a tool of emphasis in Adelaide. And I said, my wife's friend, when I should have said my friend's wife. And the problem here is, well, first of all, I've never been married. I've never had a wife as such. And it's I wonder if Fiona is somebody I know, because they might have known that would be untrue. It was that, so I just want to reassure people it was a true story, and I was just recalling it, and I may have reached into an area of untruths that are mis-recollections.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that must be a big part of what you've been involved in.
Well, there's some quite credible research out there that is very clear on this, and that is that, we can be very easily influenced. And let me give you a really good example of that. Many years ago, I was investigating an armed robbery, and I got to the scene and I said to the uniform guys, I said, we got any witnesses? And they said, yeah, we got 4. I said, fantastic. I said, separate them and I'll get around to them. So I go around. The first witness I spoke to, I said, so what'd you see? Tell me what happened. Open narrative, tell me what happened. And anyway, the guy goes through the story and says the 2 guys jump in a brown Commodore. I said, do you know roughly what model, what year? And he says, I think it was a VH. Okay. And any other distinguishing features like registration number? And he said, no, I didn't get the registration number. It was definitely a brown Commodore. Next witness I go up to she tells me the story. I said, what sort of car was it? And she said it was a blue one. Right. And I said, right, would you know a model or make? And you've got to be really careful because people can be quite suggestive. And this research shows children in particular will often, if they're led, say things that they think the adult or parent wants them to say. So they can be very easily led, and that's a different type of interview altogether. But anyway, and she said, yes, I'm pretty sure it was like a Corolla, Toyota Corolla.
Wow.
So now we've got 2 people seeing exactly the same thing, have very different recollections of what they saw. And, of course, the third person said it was I can't remember, I think it was a Statesman or something back in the day. Now, how is it that within an hour of the crime being committed, 3 people at the scene can have such different recollections? Now, let's not forget, in America, people are on death row convicted on identity evidence, and we know how frail the human mind can be. It is not uncommon when you don't have all the facts to try to make sense of what happened and try to fill the gaps. And this may not be factual, but this is your way of trying to make sense of what's happened. So we know how notoriously, and any barrister will tell you this, how notoriously unreliable eyewitness testimony can be. And like I said, we've got people on death row only, no other corroborative, scientific, medical, forensic evidence, but just an ID. That's the person. So, and then we've also got other issues of acquired brain injury. If people have, issues recalling historical events. And, how many times, and I've seen this many times in my career, where, we had an ID parade and the suspect had very good tattoos, but all the guys in the parade had to have their hands behind them. So it wasn't, prejudicial or,
leading.
Correct. So all in the thing of fairness. But, and it brings back what you just raised, and I think that's a valid point. Sometimes people do make errors and do make mistakes, but is there malice in that? Is it? So it's very different when there's intent to mislead in a deception, right? And we know that people lie for different reasons, but the issue is if it's a slip up, is that a lie? Or is that a genuine, issue that we can't recall?
So two things like that. First of all, I immediately couldn't believe they jumped into so many different cars. That's not really efficiently getting away, is it?
Unless they all come in separate cars and they're going to meet up later.
But as an investigator, let's just go a little bit deeper on that. So is there any way you can determine who's the more accurate? Like, as soon as you said brown Commodore, I thought, I can't remember seeing that many brown Commodores in my life. I've seen, bronze and tan, but never brown. Do you get prejudiced by how good the witness is?
Yeah, very, very good question. Well, firstly, I find out later on, I'll get to that answer in a second, but I find later on that the witness were not separated and they were together. Someone asked the other, what sort of car was it? So they're now having a conversation and they're actually fabricating what they think happened. So now you've got three separate opinions trying to work out what type of car it was. So that's an issue there. And I've just forgotten the second part of your question. What was the first part?
So the first part was about, how do you work out which is the best witness?
Yeah. So we try to corroborate it. And just because someone says it is, it doesn't necessarily mean. So let me give you another example of that. I've been to many crime scenes and the FBI, when it comes... Yeah, but you're the cause.
Yes.
I actually come up after you have created the issue. So the FBI will actually, profiling, psychological profiling is a big issue, right? It's used quite extensively. But look, I can tell you, I've worked on homicide cases where, I'll give you a great one. The murder of young Bonnie Clark. And what had happened was some of the investigators were pretty certain the mother may have been involved. And a couple of the investigators made it pretty clear that they thought that the mother, Marion Weishart, and I can say this now because it's all in public record, was responsible for sexually assaulting her child in an effort to, get police off the trail, so to speak. Now, statistically that's rare for a mother to sexually abuse her offspring, physically maybe, but so you've got to look at different motives. Now, just getting back to what we were talking about before, I can go to a crime scene. I can tell you within minutes whether it's organised or disorganised, whether the offender spent time with the victim post-mortem, whether the body's been moved, all that type of thing. So you need to corroborate those stories. And how would you corroborate in this case? Well, I just went looking for CCTV footage and then we got the real car. And it was, and by the way, it was a brown Commodore.
It was a brown, okay.
And just interesting on that. Now, this is an interesting point when it comes back to memory. You said that you don't see many VH Commodores and it's brown, so it sounds like there's a degree of accuracy and credibility and validity in that, right? But are you convincing yourself, or is it factual? We corroborated it by looking at the CCTV footage, and then later on, because we had the registration when we saw the car parked in the garage, blah blah blah. But we always need to corroborate.
Well, I'll tell you another instance where you should never get people together to answer a question is if you're doing a gig in the country, excuse me one moment. If you're doing a gig in the country and you say to some of the local townspeople who are country people, what's the best way to get back to Melbourne? Never ask two people at the same time, because they will contradict each other, or they will give you directions based on their own experience.
Yeah.
You're going to go past Smitty's place. Well, where's Smitty's place? Well, it's about 500 metres up the road. Now the other one will go, no, it's not. It's not. It's about 4 kilometres. But you do kilometres. I still do miles. It's about 3 miles. Anyway, you go past Smitty's place. And do you remember? And then you turn right. Remember where Brownie crashed the van? No, Brownie didn't crash the van there. Brownie crashed the van down in Gippsland. No, that was, and you just go, forget it, right? Because their metrics are different.
Correct.
Their metrics of recollection are different. And, I imagine it would be, and you could elucidate on this, would people who can drive give a different a witness about something than those people who can't drive? Does that come up? Is that a factor? Or
So
experience? So experience, like, he took off in I don't know. It's
not police speak, like he alighted from the vehicle and decamped and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I just asked that. And this is for the viewers. Do cops talk to each other like that?
No,
I'm just decamping to the toilet.
I don't know. I occasionally it's not as bad, I must admit, as what it used to be, but. I like when they're addressing a press conference and they talk in third person. They go, police are looking for, well, who are you? Yeah. You're the cleaner doing a press conference. So I don't know why they talk in third person, beyond me. But I think it's the, bang, you've got cameras shoved in your face, you've got, lights and that. And a lot of detectives and police and even senior commissioned officers, not so bad now because they do get media training, they go into what I call robotic mode, and they talk like people don't talk. I've never ever been to any event or any job where police have spoken like that.
Surely, would it be a part of your training, police officer training, for all of you on how to give evidence?
Oh yeah,
again, because it must be difficult. I suppose. Am I right in saying you're only supposed to give facts? You're not supposed to give opinion.
Yeah, 100%. Although that was a little bit different, because in the old days, if you got a drunk, you could lock a drunk up, and of course, the next day you'd go to court and you'd stand up in front of the magistrate and you'd have to give evidence that, in your opinion, they were intoxicated. So it's not like a breath test where you've got a BA reading. Breath alcohol analysis running. So it comes down to your opinion. And what used to make me laugh, you'd see so many uniformed guys in there, like a big night on night shift. They get there the next day, they're tired or whatever, and they're giving evidence and say, yes, your worship, the offender was unsteady on his feet. His clothing was dishevelled. His eyes were glazed. I could strongly smell the odour of alcohol. And like they all said the same thing. It was just like, every now and again I used to think, just make something up different, like he projectile vomited over himself as he headbutted the car, which is probably more closer to reality, but part of that robotic mode, I think.
And they're not necessarily being dishonest, are they? Because in truth, the person was drunk. But, the way you described it, you said they were unsteady, unsteady on their feet. They're weaving from side to side,
Yeah, but that could be someone like me who, when I was at the academy, every time I had to run across that damn balance beam, I'd fall off. I'm the clumsiest person out. So in DUI testing, like you see in the States, they go, walk this line. I could never do that.
Yeah,
I would, toe to heel, I'd be falling over all over the place. It doesn't mean, so they would use a number of tests, and usually it's the capability they're driving or whatever.
That would be, do they become an elite police force, those that can run across the beam?
Well, I can tell you, back in the day, the academy, they used to, and there'd be a lot of people who would listen to this and they'll go, come on, Van Apps, get off it. But I remember you had to do, now I think it was, and I'm sure someone will call in and let us know, but it was 2 laps of the 400-metre track. Then you had to jump over a fence. You had to dive through a window. You had to drag a body for, I don't know, 25, 30 metres, whatever it was. You had to go on a balance beam. Now, I had it all down, Pat. Like, seriously, I was blitzing it back in those days until I got to the balance beam and I'd fall off and they go, back to the start. And like, I'd do about 3 or 4 times and I would fall off that stupid freaking beam. So when I graduated, I thought, geez, I hope I don't have to chase anyone across any beams. But other than that, I'm fine.
So there's just the words of the wise, the criminal elite out there that where not all police will pursue you across a balance beam.
No. I remember I was working at Brunswick and I'll never forget this. And we get called to offenders on, which means somebody breaking into our house.
Brunswick, inner north.
Yeah, Brunswick, inner north, Melbourne. Anyway, so we get called to offenders on where somebody's believed to be breaking into a house. And I will never forget, I was just got back from holidays. I'd been working out. I felt pretty fit. And I was working, I won't mention the policewoman's name, but I was working with this policewoman. And anyway, these 2 offenders, they saw us and they bolted. These guys were like greyhounds. Now, they were smart because they separated. So I start chasing one and my partner starts chasing the other. We're going different directions. So you've got to be careful, right? So I'm start running and I hear my partner yell out, stop or I'll shoot. And this guy goes, like stops dead. And I go, well, I'll have to try that. I go, stop or I'll shoot. And he ran 10 times faster. I couldn't keep up with it. Anyway, so I had to go back and because obviously partner safety was an issue there. So, sometimes, verbal judo techniques do and don't work.
Well, and that is the tip, and I'll refine the tip I just gave, which is if you do a crime, head for a gym, right? Because there's a much better chance there'll be a balance beam in there and you can affect your escape.
I'm never going to hear the end of this now.
So, Steve,
I've got a tip.
Yeah.
I want to start introducing different tips, different things that people should be looking at because I get this all the time. What are the key things I should look for? Blah blah blah. So I've got 2 today.
Okay.
One is every yes or no question gives a liar a 50% chance of survival.
Right.
Now think about that. I mean, there's no content, information, structure, and detail if you ask questions that are closed.
Yeah.
Right. The second part of that. And this is what
Sorry, could you give us an example of that?
Yeah. You've got good Microsoft Word skills, haven't you? What are you going to say? No, I suck?
Yeah.
And that response, that closed response, it basically gives me a closed answer. Now, if you've got somebody that wants to be evasive, omissive and dismissive, they're not going to give you a lot of information. And you're actually helping, you're actually providing that out. So a better way would approach, and this is the one question liars always struggle to answer. The one question, walk me through exactly what happened from beginning to end. So now it's no longer closed, it's open, and you have to create the narrative. Now, if you're telling the truth, you're recalling on historical events through sensory input. Not only that, you're using emotion and sensory detail of what happened when you're recalling cognitively past events. So the language would reflect not just what happened, but how you felt. Deceptive people don't do that because they're making it up on the fly. They have to create. They have to, not only do they have to create a false memory, they've then got to tell it in a believable and credible way. And that's where chinks start appearing.
I think you just described a comedian there, Steve, because really when you craft a joke, when you write a joke, you have to get the order right. You have to make it believable. And I had an experience of that. I don't know if I mentioned this in an early episode where I was interviewed by the police. I inadvertently bought a stolen computer.
I love this. This would be good.
And I was proceeding in a westerly direction.
Can we just get back to how you inadvertently?
No, we are glossing straight over that. But
I can't help myself.
I was interviewed. By 3 detectives. So serious, right? And I'm thinking, well, they think I bought a stolen computer. It can't be that serious. And one of them was from the robbery squad, so quite serious. And the other two were from Melbourne CI. Anyway, one of them said to me, because I was appearing on TV at the time, and he said to me, Brad, you know, your career's going all right at the moment. You'd do all right with the girls, wouldn't you? And I hesitated because I would love people to think that I did, right? But I didn't, and I never did, right? And I reckon that he asked me that question. I felt like he asked me that question just to see what I look like when I hesitate. That makes sense?
Yeah,
It was very leading, but it was nothing to do with
the issue.
the issue, yeah.
And you know, that's a very valid point because one of the things that, you know, before I flew over to the States and did my training, because I did my internship with LAPD and spent time with their robbery homicide division, their polygraph unit and a couple other areas. And I thought I was a really good interviewer until I realised I didn't. I mean, in Australia, typically what would happen is we would gather the evidence, use the points of proof, negate any defences, see how they respond to the question, all that type of thing. But what I didn't pay a lot of attention to was the process of asking not just the right questions, but benchmarking. Now let's talk a little bit. I think the first episode we spoke briefly, but what I'll do is I'll ask certain questions that I know neurologically you have to recall historical events. I might say things like, tell me, Brad, what was your first job? I worked in a bank or whatever. And
I was robbing a bank. No.
No, I was receiving stolen computers. And anyway, and you'll go through a bit of information and I'll ask you questions. Now, you probably don't realise this, but what I'm doing is I'm looking I'm benchmarking your behaviour, how you respond to normal open questions. I'm looking for micro-expressions, blocking behaviours, all that type of thing. But I'm also looking for, padding, or are you just answering the question? Now, later on, if I say to you, where were you between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. last night? And now there's a lot of response latency, a lot of ums and ahs, a lot of unnecessary or superfluous fillers. Then I'm thinking, okay, well, he wasn't doing that before when he's recalling something. Why is he doing it now? And that comes back to why the question can often expose cognitive load. And what I mean by cognitive load is we've seen this under MRI, when you concoct or fabricate a story, you're using several parts of your brain. If you're recalling a historical event, you're accessing your memory side, whereas if you're concocting a story, you're now relying on memory, but your prefrontal cortex as well. So now it's taking much more processing, much more time, and you've got to also think, what have I said previously before? So now it's creating even more load. And so if I'm interviewing somebody and I see that load increase slowly, and it's a pretty straightforward question, and they're excluding themselves from the narrative, and they say, went to the shop. Now I know they're not even using pronouns. So holistically, we need to look for a number of things, but benchmark is what you refer to, and that's what that detective did with you.
Yeah, which I think it is probably a reason why there's not very many comedians in jail, because we are quite adept. But you mentioned there, and this is something that's always intrigued me, is lies can lead to other lies. Like, first, there's two parts. First part is, if you said to me, where were you, 3 weeks ago on a Thursday between 7 and 8 o'clock.
And you're having an affair with someone else's wife, and you may not be involved in the crime, and you don't want to implicate yourself, there's a potential deception.
Okay, well,
I would be thinking, why is he not answering the question?
That was my second question, right? So, yeah, good. Thanks. All right.
Sorry, I took the flame out of that one.
But the first question is simply, a lot of people would need a bit of time to work out what they were doing because they were doing bugger all.
Yep. Well, if I asked you, what did you have for dinner last Tuesday night?
Yeah.
See, and that's there's no repercussion or ramifications for getting that question wrong, but you're thinking, now let's just say I'm a homicide detective and I'm asking you that same question. Now and you may be telling the truth. You may have gone to, KFC or wherever. Yeah. It's not a threatening question. However, you're thinking, if I can't come up with an answer, he's going to think that I'm lying. Yeah. So we have to take into account that the average person has issues with cognitive recall, and then that can also be affected by head trauma or all sorts of issues. But at the end of the day, we have to make allowances. So I think you'll find that if you said to me, "I was KFC," I would say, "Okay, well, do you remember which KFC?" And humans are creatures of habit. Yeah. So you might every Thursday night, on the way to so-and-so, stop and buy a burger or whatever it is.
Chapel Street, opposite Chase's.
There you go. So then I would, if you were in that time frame, you were seen at the scene at that approximate time, well, then I would actually go there and, who knows, from an investigative viewpoint, look at CCTV, see if we can corroborate that you're there. Now, if it corroborates, then you're telling the truth.
Yeah.
But sometimes people do get a little bit stressed when they've never had any dealings with the police.
Yeah.
And they may tell a lie. And there's one particular homicide case where this guy, and I'll be careful what I say here because it's not resolved, but this guy was having married, several children, having an affair with a work colleague. And he goes to this work colleague's house and finds a body there. He doesn't want anyone to know that he's having an affair. So does he report it to the police? Right. Does he not report it to the police? If he doesn't report it to the police and he's seen there inside or attending that address, so then there's a number of issues. He may be telling the truth, not involved in the homicide, but is lying because he doesn't want his wife or family to know, or anyone else for that matter.
That is fascinating. Look, we're coming up to time. You had a case you were telling me about I think it was a deception. Was it an Olympian?
Oh yes, Grace Jones. She won.
Grace Jones.
Grace Jones.
No.
Yes, she's gorgeous. I had a crush on her. No, it wasn't Grace Jones. She won the 2000. I think it was don't quote me on this. 2000 4x4 relay. She won several
gold
medals. Or by herself. And
was it swimming you're talking about?
No, runner, track and field.
Oh, okay, right.
First name, but it's definitely Jones. I remember that. Anyway, so what happened was it was suspected she was on performance-enhancing drugs, and she got up in front of the media and made statements like, I have been tested many, many times, and Asada has never, ever found drugs in my system. Now, that sounds like a pretty complete denial, doesn't it? Now, there is a difference between a denial and an objection, right?
Okay.
Brad, did you steal that $20,000? No, I didn't. There's a clear-cut use of a direct pronoun and denial. I didn't and no.
Yeah.
Whereas why would I do that? I'm not the sort of person that would do that. I'm not that sort of person who would, steal something or something like that. Marion Jones, that's right, Marion Jones. Thanks to our wonderful producer there, slaving in the background. Marion Jones. So anyway, so when she said, I have been tested many, many times, it sounds like a very direct, clear statement, but just because you've been tested doesn't mean you're not using drugs. It just means that there's been nothing positive in that test. And eventually she was caught out because in the States lying to, I can't remember which state it was, but lying to a federal investigator is actually an offence. And she did a mea culpa in front of the world media and said, yes, I did silly things and I took drugs. I don't know if those medals were taken off her, but and, it just comes back to the same old, we all lie, whether you're an Olympic athlete, whether you're an Olympic cyclist, or whether or not you're a politician, a prime minister, or a president, or someone who's lying about eating a cake if you're a child.
There's some pretty nasty leading questions out there too, which is there's the old trap, which is where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like, if I said to you, Steve, have you been caught touching yourself in the boys' toilets? And you go, no. Well, it doesn't mean that you don't do that. It just means you haven't been caught.
Correct. It's like, are you still beating your wife?
Well, I didn't want to do that one. But, I just I felt like I've taken a bit of a pounding here, and I thought you could. And then
You're going to have to try harder than that.
me and my non-existent wife. She lied. Did she? Because I suppose if you lie to a federal investigator there, you could do time for that.
Yeah, they're pretty strict on that sort of
felony,
stuff.
is it?
Yeah. I mean, but like here, I used to get lied to every day of the week. I'll never forget a detective once said to me, he jumps in the car and he says, I'm sick to death of being lied to. I said, you're in the wrong job.
Yeah, totally. I would expect it. In fact, it probably starts from the moment. In fact, now new constables go out and they do breatho. They do.
They do a number. They go to city traffic. They go to random breath testing stations, and before they unleash them on the public in a major way. Yeah. So it's
the first lie would be, how are you, driver? Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm not going to say, well, I got stopped by you. Not good.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, really, when you think about it, I think in my experience, positive contact with the police usually, people remember that, but they also remember the negative ones too.
Oh, I have a few of those. Look, again, that is the end for this week. Other than the fact I can now go and listen to this tape and find out what else I got wrong.
Just to finish up on, we've had a couple people come forward and wants to know the end result of what happened in New Jersey. Did I
you
actually?
Never said, did you?
No, I didn't. And obviously, it's either irritating people or people want to know. So
just in case they haven't heard other episodes.
Yep. So the long and short of it was, I was doing a number of talk shows throughout the states, morning shows, and I was in a party in New Jersey, and there was a lady there who had a few drinks and wanted to know how good I was. And she said, in front of everyone, she said, I'm having an affair. No, I had an affair. I can't remember if it's had or having an affair. No, it was had affair, because having means it's still continuing. Right. And I thought, she goes, am I lying? And I'm thinking, do I want to answer this question in front of everyone and whatnot? Anyway, there are a number of things that she said about her partner at the time, the question I asked is, why do you think someone would have an affair? Which is usually a pretty good insight to why somebody may be having an affair. And she turns around and says, my husband, he's not a good communicator. We don't talk anymore. And she's saying a number of things there. And I thought, well, there's a red flag there. And anyway, I thought, should I tell her that I believe that she was potentially having an affair in front of her husband and everyone else? It's not a good outcome. It's not a good social outcome. It's probably not going to be a reason for me to be invited back to that place. So I declined to say anything to her. I just changed the subject because, socially, what's the point? In my early days, if I saw something, I was going, a little bit different if I'm interviewing you for a homicide. I'm going to peel away every single layer until I get to the bottom of it. But in a social context, knowing that we all lie, what's the value of exposing that lie? So the short answer was no, I did not tell her what I thought. But I believe she was lying.
You've identified that very special kind of deceit, which is changing the subject. Yeah, because you just...
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, exactly. So no answer was given.
Yeah.
All right, well, on that note, that's it for this week.
I look forward to our next podcast.
See you then.
Ciao.
I just want to say I hope there's a lot of criminals listening to this. You'll be picking up some good tips